Star Wars fans, the Book of Boba Fett Episode 3 is here, and I've got some thoughts.
Rancor are emotionally complex creatures.
What's up, everybody? It's Josh coming at you from Nerdvengers Tower as per usual, and smash like on this video if you have some mixed feelings about Book of Boba Fett Episode 3, because that's where I'm at with it. Like, I consider this episode to be a pretty mixed bag. I don't think I hated the episode. I don't think I disliked it enough to turn on the show completely. I still enjoyed myself, and I'm still really excited for what is to come, but there were definitely a few things in the episode that I found to be confusing, that I didn't really like, or that didn't work for me personally. There was good, but there was some bad. But let's start with the good. Let's get positive, because this is quickly going to turn into one of those videos where I gripe seemingly way too much about all kinds of little things. First awesome thing in the episode, we get a new Rancor and Danny Trejo in Star Wars. I was like shocked when I saw him. I was like, oh shit, is that Danny Trejo? Like, he's going to be the new Rancor trainer, dude? And yes, you get a Rancor back in Jabba's palace, I guess now Boba's palace, and you get Danny Trejo in Star Wars. That's pretty freaking cool if you ask me. But we will get to the fact that it's an emotional support Rancor.
Rancor are emotionally complex creatures.
And I mean, as far as pushing the story along, I think this episode actually does a pretty good job. I mean, number one, in the flashback scenario, we come to a close on his time with the Tusken tribe. Unfortunately, because they all get massacred out in the desert while he's meeting with the Pikes. And then in present day, the twins have now left the planet. The mayor is now working with the Pikes, and it's the Pike Syndicate that Boba more or less is going to go to war with in upcoming episodes. And that's all serviceable. It's all super fun. Again, I had a lot of fun with this episode. There's a lot of fun Star Wars-y things that go on in the show. But now let me talk about a couple of my gripes. Okay, so there are two main issues I have with this episode. Number one, all has to do with the Krrsantan fight, the BK fight between this awesome Wookiee bounty hunter and Boba. Now, initially when this fight kicked off, I was all for it. I was like, this is awesome. BK's just going to grab him up out of the bacta tank, and we're going to get to see Boba beat BK without his armor initially. Like, he's going to have to pull off some crazy badass stuff to take Black Krrsantan out. And that doesn't happen, even though, yes, Boba does land a few good shots on Black Krrsantan. The whole of Jabba's palace, which I guess is just the new biker gang, the Gamorreans and Fennec, all come to the aid of Boba and essentially help to capture him in the prison beneath the throne where the Rancor usually is at. And this fight just ultimately didn't do it for me, man, okay? Mostly because I wanted an epic showdown just between Boba and this crazy Wookiee bounty hunter, and I thought it could be very vicious. The Wookiee would be slamming him, blasting him, doing all sorts of crazy stuff, because it's not like Krrsantan just uses his fist. He does have the crazy strength and the crazy electrified knuckles, but he uses blasters. I mean, he comes out holding one of the biggest blasters I've ever freaking seen in my life in episode 2, so I just expected a little bit more, some blasting, you know, him and Boba squaring off head to head. And when you get these new biker people to help out, the Gamorreans, and then Fennec, and then he ultimately just ends up down in the Sarlacc, or rather Rancor prison. It's so far removed from what I was imagining in my head, and I don't know, man. I just thought, like, obviously with this crazy good team behind this show, that they would realize this was a much better way to go with it. Maybe it was just really difficult to do action with the Krrsantan model or costume or whatever, because he really just throws people around, tackles people, bites people. It's not as exciting as I wanted it to be. And speaking of that crazy biker gang that again helps Boba defeat Krrsantan, yeah, just plainly wasn't feeling that. This is an interesting choice by John and by Rodriguez to literally introduce a young cyberpunk looking gang on Tatooine that initially comes to Boba by way of somebody complaining because they've stolen his water, this water broker character. And it's just a really interesting choice to make. Like, instead of just giving Boba time to do more awesome things, they chose to inject this gang in there to further establish the Boba character being nice and having a soft spot in his heart for sort of ruffians, and really adopting and building out this family of his. Not to mention the design is bold. Like, I find it kind of interesting that they just did this. These are very colorful speeder bikes. They look like Vespas, which is a really weird design choice. And the design of the characters themselves, they look like cyberpunky, like way too clean type of designs. It's just all around a really weird choice. And I think whenever you do something like this in any kind of big IP, you run the risk of it just not landing with people. And frankly, it did not land with me. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like everything they did in the episode. I just really wish that a lot of the time that was spent with those characters, watching them do things, was just spent with Boba doing more things. Like, it's the Book of Boba Fett. Like, I just want him to do more things. So those are my main two gripes with the episode. And again, I did enjoy myself watching the episode, and I still like the show, but that's why I dock this episode in particular major points. I feel like it's the weakest of the three so far. Now, I want to talk about this whole soft Boba beta Fett, you know, like, is he being Disneyfied sort of discussion. I want to talk about that because this episode did not help the case of those that feel like Boba is still savage and is going to be more savage in the future. Because there were several things done by the Boba character in this episode that even me, I was like, I don't know about that. Number one, when the droid doesn't even want to mention Jabba, Boba tells the droid he's not going to hurt you. Like, you don't have to be afraid of Jabba anymore. And I was like, why? Like, not why don't you have to be afraid anymore? Like, yeah, that's obvious, but it's a droid. Anyways, and also, why is Boba trying to comfort this droid? Honestly, the whole idea of him siding with these bikers, these young people that steal water from a broker that was going to pay him double tribute, it seems so odd. And again, for him to just side with the street gang and the ruffians, and like, I have a soft spot for these kids. Him letting Kersantin go and telling him that it's just business, like, it just felt odd. Like, he's just gonna let BK go, and like immediately he's like, uncuff him, like, let's let him go. I'm hashtag good guy Boba. And then the Rancor stuff, like, he's trying to form an emotional bond with the Rancor. Like, and I know we've sort of established in this show particularly that he has a soft spot for animals, like he liked the dog creature thing that the Tuskens had, but it's still just like continuous odd choices that are like trying to humanize Boba, like, and I feel like they're compensating at this point. Like, it's becoming a little bit too much, where essentially, like, I'm kind of on the fence. Like, are they Disneyfying Boba? I don't know. Like, I was all for growth of the character. I still think you're going to get savagery, and I still think he should go crazy and go John Wick, as he did in Mandalorian Season 2. But, dude, there were some things in this episode that are like, I don't know about that, Chief. But again, let's close it out on some positive notes. You know, I always like to kind of see where the fandom is at with these sort of things. Like, I watch the different reactions of people on Twitter, just see what videos are made, what are people saying on Reddit, etc., etc. It does appear that a lot of people still really loved this episode, you know, which I just always like to make a point of that, because I don't, you know, my opinions are my own, and I'm not trying to say that I even call what I see out there perfectly within the fandom. I just want to acknowledge that there were a ton of folks, even in the stream I did last night and on Twitter, that absolutely loved this episode. In fact, some people that didn't even like episode 1 and 2 really loved episode 3. So, you know, all of this stuff is subjective, and I think, for me, I'm not so upset about episode 3 that I'm writing off the show, or that I don't think it's going to get amazing. I just think that's sort of a weirdly placed episode. The pacing was a bit off for me. Like, they quickly wrap up the Tusken tribe stuff. Like, after spending so much time in the first 2 episodes, they wrap it up like with an off-screen, you know, massacre. And it's just weird choices like that. The BK fight not being up to par for what I wanted it to be, and then the biker gang just not landing with me. Like, this episode's a 7 out of 10, right? So I think we have a 9 out of 10, or rather we had an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, and then a 7 out of 10. I still strongly feel like the rest of the show is going to be very, very strong and be really exciting. But last thing I'll say before we get out of here is that it's currently being reported that there are delays in the production of Mandalorian Season 3 due to the Decepticon variant out there and, what's going on in the world with as far as health is concerned. Just want to put this out there that I feel strongly there's still tension within Lucasfilm about Mandalorian with John and possibly Pedro and the whole situation over there. And I think you'll start to hear maybe some of those stories kind of come out in the next couple of days and or weeks. And I only bring that up to say that as confident as I am with John and Dave and as happy and excited as I am about Book of Boba Fett, there's always a chance here that things are not going really all that great behind the scene. And the main reason I want to bring that up is because many believe, can't really prove it, but many believe that Book of Boba Fett in some ways could have been like an emergency side note kind of a show where after all the trouble from Mandalorian Season 2, this crazy Pedro rumor, that basically John and Robert just decided, hey, let's just do Book of Boba Fett. And so they really pull it together rather quickly to have sort of this other show where they can focus on Boba while they work on the issues and problems behind the scenes and figure out where they want to go from there. So if Boba Fett ends up being pretty uneven, kind of sloppy as a show, you could then choose to believe or consider the possibility that the fact that the show was made sort of in response to drama and problems like that hurt the quality of the program. That would suck because that would just point to more problems with Lucasfilm and sort of their inability to execute on projects really, really well. Hopefully that's not the case. And either way, hopefully all this stuff ends up being really, really good. I'm still really optimistic about Book of Boba Fett and the future of the Filoniverse, but I want to know what you think about it. So let me know in the comment section below. Like this video if you like it, subscribe to this channel, see more of our content pop up in your recommended feed. Check me out on TikTok, check out the podcast on Spotify, and check out the live streaming channel where we do all kinds of fun live streams. Always a good time over there. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.